All right, we are back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us. The phone line 737-7587. Talking about some of the things that have come up out of Washington, D.C. with regard to Donald Trump. A book coming out that will be on, I think, in bookstores on January 9th. And, kind of raising questions about how things were going behind the scenes and all of that. The other thing is the tweet with regard to North Korea this past week on the nuclear weapons. And just by now, all of you have heard it, but you know that Kim Jong-un, again, saber-rattling with his nuclear weapons and all this, and talking about how he has a button for the nuclear arsenal in his country on his desk. And our president tweeted back, and this is a real tweet, it's not a Saturday Night Live skit. He tweets back, "Will someone from his depleted and food-starved regime please inform him that I, too, have a nuclear button, but it is a much bigger and more powerful one than his, and my button works." All right, and it's gotten a lot of attention. Look, some people with bravado are going to say, wow, yeah, he's letting him have it, whatever. On the other hand, others are going to say, that's kind of scary when you're talking about a nuclear arsenal and weapons. And, just a lot of people I've talked to are just a little stunned something like that would come from a president.
He seems to be responding in kind, which has a certain bravado to it. But, what is it? If you wrestle with a pig, you're going to get mud on you. Yeah. And you almost wonder if that's not partly what's, if there's anybody in the world who deserves disapprobation, it's Ung. What he says about a depleted and starved, the two, what is it, the one guy who recently defected over the border had a 12-inch tapeworm or something. All kinds of.
Well, I mean, the president's right. I mean, that country is depleted, food-starved. The people there are in dire straits. You're right.
The question is, what are we going to do about it? And particularly, what is it? Next month we got Winter Olympics there. What could we reason? The estimates are that in the first hour there would probably be, just from conventional weapons, there would be up to 100,000 casualties in the capital of South Korea alone. And it's, not everything is necessarily, unfortunately, amenable to a military solution.
Oh, yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the Olympics, because maybe, and this is what the Olympics really, to me, are all about beyond sport, maybe this creates an opening, because we've heard now that North Korea has actually talked about sitting down with South Korea to open some dialogue. And I think really it's driven by Kim Jong-un wanting his athletes to be able to participate in the Seoul, in the games there.
Perhaps.
And that may be part of it. And if this opens up a dialogue, I think that's a healthy thing. And we know he likes sports, right? Because he likes Dennis Rodman
basketball.
in the NBA.
He sure does.
Hopefully there's something that comes from that. Well, let's get your take on it, folks. We'll go take some phone calls. Let's go to Mike. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Nick. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. What's on your mind?
Well, it just goes to show you that business people get out here and they can turn on each other and not have any implications. But when you're on the world stage and it's political, it's a different story. My question is, just what you were talking about with Kim Jong-un and this rhetoric back and forth. And I wanted to ask the doctor if there was anything in place where, with this nuclear football, say our president goes off the deep end, and even on a nuclear limited strike, orders a strike. Is the military able to disobey that order without being treasonous? Is there anything in our Constitution against acts against humanity where our commander might say this is an illegal act because of the Nuremberg trials? I was just following orders, no longer cuts it.
Yeah, no.
I know it's not as simple as there is no button on the desk. Thank goodness, you get a cat or something walk across the desk and you end up with nuclear war.
Right, there is no. It's a briefcase, isn't it, with an officer that travels with the president everywhere he goes.
So you have to verify a code. I heard a discussion with someone the other day saying, if they got an order that just seemed completely out of bounds, they would at least have the ability to say, are you sure? That sort of thing.
But how much are there checks and balances? I'm just curious. If a president, this president, or any president, decides to launch nuclear weapons, and the process, and he decides to do it on his own, is there any Congress who could step in and say, well, at least, President, can you tell us why? I mean, let's just say on a whim, any president decides to do that. How can you control it?
To start with the obvious, the Constitution vests the war proclaiming power in Congress.
Okay.
Now, the exception, of course, would, clearly if North Korea were to launch an intercontinental ballistic missile our way, one would not expect to convene Congress and give a speech before one responded. But if one were doing it as a preemptive strike, I think at the very least you would call together your heads of your armed services committees and that sort of thing and give them a heads up. Try to get some counsel.
I'm just wondering, I mean, is it capable for a president on his own, getting up in the middle of the night, to launch the weapons?
Well, my understanding is he couldn't do it just like that.
Right.
Now, he would have to place some calls. He would have to give some codes. There would probably be some verification back.
And he's not the one that actually touches the button. My understanding is there's a place where they open the silos. The nuclear submarine is probably where it would come from.
Right.
It makes me think of a movie, an old one that I just recently saw. Crimson Tide. It was just on TV with Gene Hackman and Denzel Washington. Great movie. It had to do with miscommunication and how they had to fight to decide whether to launch or not.
Right.
But it's a scary prospect. This is not a game, okay?
No,
and this is not something you mess around with light tweets. And whether you support Donald Trump, and there may be a lot of good reasons you do, or don't like him, I don't care who the president is. I don't like that kind of tweet in a cavalier attitude when we're talking about nuclear weapons. I don't like it. There may be some cowboys out there, you tell them. Well, if that's you, you're just wrong, okay?
There was a period in American history when we didn't do it through tweets, but where we did something similar. And that was in the Eisenhower administration, where we sort of bluffed in terms of he would threaten massive nuclear retaliation in hopes that would keep the arms budget down, that you would not, in fact, it's called mutual assured destruction, MAD.
That's the Cold War.
Right. And so there's some parallels there to that, but again, most people think that Ung is. I personally think he's a very crafty, cagey, evil person, but I think our perception of him is that he's just a little psychologically off balance, that is not completely rational. And I think that there you want to take the higher road. You don't want people thinking that maybe both sides have the same imbalance there.
Exactly. Let's go to Taylor. Hi, Taylor.
Hey, Dick.
Hey, what's on your mind?
Well, I want to wish you and the professor and this listening audience a happy New Year.
Thank you. You too.
Hopefully going to be a great one.
Yeah.
Well, as expected, I would be calling on this subject this morning. I, like others, have heard most of the comments about this new book, and I would say this. Steve Bannon was forced out of the White House, and primarily forced out by the family members of Donald Trump. And this is a good way for him to stick his thumb in their eyes for what they said and did.
Let me ask you this, Taylor. I got a couple of questions for you, but I agree with you there. But it's interesting, not long after he left, at least for the past several months, he's been still remaining to be a very strong advocate for the president. I mean, he was, he was very much behind it. I guess something changed, right?
Well, he said he was behind the president, but he was also saying, I'm against every Republican senator that's currently serving, and so that would certainly not be of any help to the president if wind up with half the Senate being defeated over. And the candidates that Bannon has put up or attempted to put up against the incumbent senators were a bunch of
no, I agree. You're right.
Doofuses that wouldn't have a chance. So that part, and I thought it was really a cheap shot. Some of the comments about the daughter and the wife, and
I think you got to take a lot of that with a grain of salt. I'm in agreement with this.
That's right. And now there might be some truthful statements.
Right.
There's no question about there was disorganization. For a long time,
the president, even his transition team, didn't know what they were doing, and they were put together too quickly. And of course, there's been resistance to everything he's tried to do. But at any rate,
let me ask you this though too, and I know you, I think, in many times have been a supporter of the president's, but as a supporter, and you're a bright guy, Taylor. I mean, you always have, and you seem rational. You call it as you see it. Do tweets like the ones he exchanged with North Korea not bother you in the least? I mean, do you just think that's funny, or that it's aggressive and it puts him in his place? I mean, does that not bother you, the one about the size of the button and all of that, when you're talking about nuclear war?
That bothered me a great deal, and, and I thought...
I mean, it's good to hear, because there's so many supporters, be it, you know, very liberal, you know, when it came to Obama or something, and very hardcore when it comes to Trump, that I don't care what these candidates do, they think it's fine. And I have problems with that. I vote for people that I become very critical of later. And it bothers me when I've got supporters that just think it's peachy keen that he's joking in a tweet about nuclear war. And it heartens me that someone who I know is a supporter of Trump at least was maybe bothered by that a bit.
Well, I agree, and let me say this about the nuclear war. I don't know the exact procedure, but I know there are at least 3 or 4 military protocols that a directive from the president toward a nuclear attack has to go through. Now, they might be a rapid go-through, but there are exact protocols. It's not he can just because he gets the code can push the button all on his own. So
I got you. I think we have to go to a break on that. He's probably, look, in a democracy, especially in this country, I don't care if it's the president or no one person should have complete control over nuclear weapons. Unfortunately, I feel that may be the case in North Korea. Kim Jong-un wants to get that done, I think, and you don't do it, he'll just kill you and have someone take care of it.
No,
but in this country, I don't care if you're the president of the United States, who you are, one person unilaterally should not have the power just to launch without any checks and balances. Except, you know, sometimes you have to have a procedure should you have to respond to a strike coming your way. Short of that, I don't care if you're president or who, you shouldn't have the ultimate authority to do that on your own. We'll take a break. We'll be back with more of your calls. Grady, Jack, and others. The lines are open, 737-7587, right after this.